fucking hell. So I had to shut everything down and start again. Kettle is on, get kettle on. I'm on my heavy hand because I've like killed myself today. So I was saying about my lungs. I knew they weren't up to scratch. I went out Wednesday on the bike, and honestly I did about 300 yards and I had to get off. I couldn't breathe. So I'm thinking, oh, we've got serious problems going on here. So today were extremely important for me because I knew I was going to... So much working. Yeah, good. Yeah, good. So I thought I'm going to have to bang them. So I did. But first, 2 hours, I was absolutely in bits. I couldn't breathe. And then all of a sudden, like they do your lungs, you go pop, like that. Do you know if you ever get in feeling when you're thinking, oh God, I'm struggling to breathe? That's telling you need to do exercise, not sit down and rest and go and get some pills, you know? So about 2 hours in, then all of a sudden they just popped open and they expand, and I never had another problem with my lungs again. Then it was my legs. Absolutely nagging it because like we did 5 hours solid mountain biking at Gisborne Forest. I've demolished my thumb. It's absolutely killing me. I've smashed my legs to bits. My bum's sore. But most importantly, them lungs that were really not performing very well at all are now amazing and fantastic. Again. So you need to think about that, you know? It's not medical advice at all. That's health data. You know, when your lungs, if you can't breathe, you're struggling, more than not, you've got to get an hammer, you know, and hopefully they'll pop out. But I could feel it at the bottom of my lungs, the bottom parts that were opening and closing. So, yeah, but they are now, so well worth the effort, but I'm absolutely shattered, honestly, it's unreal. So, good evening to everybody. We've got sound and we've got video. Well, what more could we ask for? What more could we ask for, indeed? Right, I want to kick off. So, yeah, we've talked about the Prussians. We've realised the power that they've had with Napoleon, but also with tying the Jesuits to their cause when they got kicked out of the Vatican, subduing the Knights of Malta to its cause. So this Prussian bunch are quite a powerful group. So I found this little map image, which I'll waz over to you. And so it says current routes, and this is the Prussians. It says all Prussians were an indigenous tribe among Baltic peoples that inhabited the region of Prussia. And the map there is showing you the Baltic, so that's up northern Germany, northeast Germany. You've got Scandinavia coming down here above it. So that's the area afforded to what they call the Prussians. At the southeastern shore of the Baltic Sea, between Vistula Lagoon and the West and Curonian Lagoon. To the east, the Old Prussians, who spoke an Indo-European language, now known as Old Prussian, and worshipped pre-Christian deities, lent their name, despite very few commonalities, to the later predominantly Low German-speaking inhabitants of the region. Not until the 13th century were the Old Prussians subjugated and their lands conquered by the Teutonic Order. The remaining Old Prussians were assimilated during the following 2 centuries. Old Prussian language, largely undocumented, was effectively extinct by the 17th century. The pagan Aeste people were the first local settlers in that region and accounted for by Tacitus in 98 AD. The Old Prussians and modern Lithuanian names for localities such as the Vista Lagoon, Alstin Mare and Eist Mares, respectively, appear to derive from the Aeste and Mare lagoon or freshwater bodies, which suggests that the area around the lagoon had links with the Aeste. The original Old Prussian settlement area in the western Baltics, as well as that of the eastern Balts, was much larger than it is in historical times. The archaeological documentation and associated finds confirm uninterrupted presence from the 5th century Iron Age to the successive conquest by Slavic tribes beginning in the migration period. Baltic paganism has been described as a form of polydoxy. This is a belief in the sacredness of all natural forces and phenomena that are not personalised but have their own spiritual and magical powers. In effect, the world is inhabited by the unlimited number of spirits and demons, including beliefs in the afterlife, soul and worship of ancestors, characterised by a particular cult and associated rituals. Other authors claim well-developed and sophisticated Prussian polytheism with a well-defined pantheon of the gods. So that's the old Prussians. Of course, they were took over by the Teutonic Knights in the 1200s or 13th century. And so that was then, you could class that as being taken over by the Crusader forces, as it were. So I thought that might interest you. And then we're going to perhaps have a look at Henry Kissinger, because this military force that the Prussians pretty much represent, or, have took the name, as it were, they're carrying out the will of people like Henry Kissinger, who you could say is like the ambassador for I would say not Committee 300, I would suggest he's probably above the Committee 300 and probably the ambassador from the elect with the ruling lines to the Committee 300. That would probably be where I'd put Kissinger, but of course you never actually know where he is. So let's have a look at Kissinger. Just let me find it. And then I want to look at what they're actually trying to do now with this new constitution. And they basically, you can see that they're going to put it together at the same time as they're going to shift to a new monarch. Yeah, so they're doing quite a lot. And I can't find any Kissinger. Right, I know where he is. Just bear with me, I do apologise. Where is the bum? No, I'm not finding it. Why not? I've just seen it earlier. I did this last week, I couldn't find it, so I wanted to put it up. It's not like I can't find it. Alright. I'm going to just quit Firefox because that seems to suck a lot of juice. Oh, we're still on, and have we gone off? Oh, we're on. Amazing. Right, well, I don't understand why I can't find this Kissinger one. I've just had it. One more look for it, and then we'll move on to something else. Right, let's have a look at... Oh, no, we got him. Right. So now if I come back here, I should be able to... Bang. Why is that not trans... Have we gone off again? So that's working. Why is that not working? It doesn't seem to be working again for some reason. I might not be able to let you see this. Oh, wait a minute, unless I have to do this. It's a little bit complex, this. Yep, that's the wrong one. Why is it doing that? There's something not working correctly in this Streamlabs at the minute. Which is a bit rubbish because I've paid for it. I'd expect a bit better, to be honest. So it's not going to let me move the Kissinger report over to you, unfortunately. So I'll just read it to you, if you don't mind. Okay. He says, and this is Grunge, grunge.com, and The Untold Truth of Henry Kissinger, and it's by Jack Hawkins, and it was updated September the 16th, 2021. And it says, Henry Kissinger, but he's actually called Heinz Kissinger, okay? not Henry. Henry Kissinger was United States Secretary of State from 1973 to 1977, serving under Presidents Richard Nixon and Gerald Ford. He became famous for shaping policy in Vietnam, the Middle East, and especially China, paving the way for Nixon to establish relations with the country in 1972, according to Britannica. You've got to remember, they're playing up China as the enemy of the West. Well, they built it up to be that. That's why all our industry moved there. So, when you start listening to people like Henry Kissinger or what they've done, you've got to see that you're seeing the real high level game that comes down before it comes to us. It's so many networks involved. You don't. So if you can see Henry Kissinger and the kind of things he's done, this is how the elite are playing, which is why I say, and they control all players in this game that they've got going on. In some ways, Kissinger's life is an aspirational immigrant story, a case of the American dream in which a foreign-born boy reached the heights of American society through intelligence and hard work, yet the German native, now 98 years old, has left a very contentious legacy. A survey of US scholars ranked Kissinger as the most effective Secretary of State in the last 50 years. Hillary Clinton called him a friend. Yet many critics, including Bernie Sanders and Christopher Hitchens, described Kissinger in very harsh terms, with Hitchens calling for him to be tried as a war criminal. Here is the untold truth of Henry Kissinger. Kissinger's family fled the Nazis. Said Henry Kissinger was born Heinz Kissinger on May the 27th, 1923. He spent his early childhood in Fürth, a city in the outskirts of Nuremberg, the second largest city in Bavaria. According to World Atlas, Kissinger was the son of Louis and Paula Kissinger, a Jewish couple from the whom the Irish Times describes as profoundly religious. So this is why he became an immigrant into America and went to the heights of its mastership, as it were. In November 1923, Adolf Hitler's emergence Nazi Party staged the Beer-Hall Putsch in a failed attempt to overthrow the Bavarian government. 10 years later, Hitler would be Chancellor, turning Germany into an oppressive dictatorship that reserved particular animus for the nation's Jewish population. Kissinger's family was among the many that fled the country, leaving Fürth in 1938. Fortunately, the Kissingers left Germany before Kristallnacht, which occurred on November the 9th to the 10th of that year, also known as the Night of Broken Glass. Kristallnacht was a program against Jewish people and property, resulting in the deaths of 91 people, the looting of 7,500 Jewish businesses, and the vandalism of some 1,000 synagogues, according to Britannica. Kissinger arrived in the US aged 15, settling in New York, in New York's Washington Heights, which had so many German immigrants that it was sometimes referred to as the Fourth Reich, according to the New Yorker. During these early years, Kissinger worked in a factory making shaving brushes and planned on becoming an accountant. According to the New Yorker, Henry Kissinger was drafted into the US Army in 1942. He relished the role so much that a compatriot observed he was more American than I have ever seen any American. Historian Jeremiah Suri notes how he was recruited for his role because he spoke German, had cultural knowledge of Germany, and was of Jewish heritage, which gave the Americans confidence that he would be anti-Nazi. Serving in 84th Infantry Division, Kissinger was awarded a Bronze Star for his help in breaking up a Gestapo sleeper cell. It was during his military experience that Kissinger met Fritz Kramer, a fellow German-American some 15 years older than him. Kramer was an intense man who had animosity for both communists and Nazis, with whom he apparently fought in the streets of Weimar, Germany. Kramer's Nietzschean perspective on the world caused Kissinger to describe him as the greatest single influence on my formative views. However, according to Globala, Kramer cut ties with Kissinger in the 70s because he was visibly repulsed by Kissinger's egotism and vanity. Henry Kissinger is cited by many, including Foreign Affairs, as a 20th century figure of realpolitik. Jeremiah Suri describes realpolitik as focusing on the power centres in the world and manipulate those power centres to serve the interests of your own country. adding that realpolitik views the world through a hierarchy of power. This perspective caused Kissinger to recognise and manipulate the power of America's allies, as well as its enemies. Instead of rejecting opponents in a McCarthyite fashion, Kissinger acknowledged rival power and worked with it. He saw power before he saw anything else, be it race, creed, or class. However, this emphasis on power was not beneficial to nations without it. So he said there that realpolitik was about manipulating powers of the world to serve the interests of your own country. And of course, you would then straight away think, oh, America. Well, no, is it? It's not at all. Because China now has been pitted. If that were so, China wouldn't have been naturally pitted against the West, nor would it have become a communist regime, would it? So you get what I'm saying there. This perspective caused Kissinger to recognise and manipulate the power of American... Oh, I've done that. Countries in Africa which possess little in any way of wealth and power did not register on Kissinger's radar. These countries had nothing to offer America, so Kissinger had nothing to offer them. Realpolitik is for diplomatic chess players, not humanitarians. So you can see how they're obfuscating, saying this. You just straight away you're thinking he's talking about his country as America. Well, that's garbage. It's about controlling all these powers for his country, whatever that may be. We know he lives in China, as does Murdoch. Realpolitik brought clarity to his decisions, both good and bad. He was able to secure a détente with the Soviet Union, which promoted cooperation that Nixon described in his inaugural address as an era of negotiation. However, he also discarded lesser powers in favour of greater ones, such as supporting Pakistan against Bangladesh, despite what the Harvard Crimson describes as evidence of massacre and rape. He was and remains a master manipulator. Jeremiah Suri described Henry Kissinger as the ultimate kiss-up. This is because Kissinger had a wonderful way of figuring out what people wanted and gave it to them. Well, that's the strategy of these secret society people we've talked about, the priesthood, how they find out what you want and then give it you. And then you're beholden to them then. And each time they ask you a favour, you're corrupting yourself to the point you become at the same level as them. But you're always going to be doing what they're saying when it gets to the end of the game. So, and that's what's happening today. That's why so many of these politicians are just going on with it. They don't have a choice because they're being black. Well, they do have a choice, of course. But I think we could help them out there if we offered a full amnesty for all our politicals who are blackmailed in this way. Then you get your politics back. But they'd have to give up the masters. And that the amnesty would only last for a certain period of time. And if you didn't come forward then to be found, you'd be in trouble. But it's the only way you get it back, because what these politicians today are doing isn't of their own will. It wouldn't be what they want to do naturally. They're being made to do it. It's the only way you can take it back. It really is. The ultimate kiss-up, because Kissinger had a wonderful way of figuring out what people wanted and gave it to them. Apparently, Kissinger used this method both domestically and internationally, flattering the likes of Leonid Brezhnev and Mao Zedong, whom he was told the greatest leader in the history of the 20th century. So he told Mao Zedong that he was the greatest leader in the history of the 20th century. And look what they've created. Full-blown communism. Yeah, as a corporation. Interesting. Kissinger understood that everyone, especially vain dictators, appreciated flattery, and he used it accordingly. Kissinger reinforced his manipulation by simply being effective, and effective in a personal way. Suri expanded on his profile of Kissinger's manipulation. He builds a relationship in an almost gangster way. You need something to be done, boss. I'll do it, and don't forget that I'm doing this for you. He built personal dependencies through ego and performance, especially with Richard Nixon. Another quirk was his ability of writing things in a way that looks like he's giving you options as president. But in fact, there's only one option there. Kissinger's retained these interpersonal skills into his old age. When Suri was doing research for his book Henry Kissinger and the American Century, he met with Kissinger for several interviews. Suri described him as enormously charming and enormously obnoxious at the same time, adding that he is very good at making his case. He'll convince you. He approved the bombing of Cambodia during the Vietnam War. After holding various positions in government and publishing influential books such as Nuclear Weapons and Foreign Policy, Notes Britannica, Henry Kissinger became head of the National Security Council in 1969. So he was basically running America in 1969. And, when I studied all that UFO stuff, it was clear. Especially you take people like William Cooper and people like that on board, is that through this Roswell garbage and all that, what they managed to do by the 50s is terrify the American government, the real government, and persuaded them to hand it over to a secret government, of which Kissinger was the head. And that's what, so then by 1969, so you've had Vatican II as well. You've had Kennedy's been snotted. You've had Vatican II's in. Vietnam War's on. And this guy is now running the United States of America. A bit like the War Cabinet has been running the British Isles since 1914. According to Solon, Kissinger asked the Pentagon to outline possible bombing strategies in Indochina, the former French colony that encompassed Vietnam, Laos and Cambodia. Soon it was decided that Cambodia was the best target for America's fleet of B-52 bombers. This is because it was host to large tracts of the Ho Chi Minh Trail, which the Viet Cong used to move fighters and equipment into South Vietnam. The ensuing campaign, dubbed Operation Menu, was conducted in total secrecy, for Kissinger knew that Congress would oppose the bombing of a neutral country. So he's took over America, and now he's hiding stuff from Congress. This is the kind of guy he is. So when he says for his own country, he's not talking about the United States of America, is he? Do you know what I mean? Any Americans out there, surely you can see that. The ensuing campaign, Kissinger was reportedly hands-on with the operation and was reportedly very excited by the strategy. According to a Pentagon report, Henry A. Kissinger approved each of the 3,875 Cambodia bombing raids in 1969 and 1970, so he didn't waste any time, did he? As well as the methods for keeping them out of the newspapers. Henry Kissinger oversaw detente with the Soviet Union. Yeah, God, and it's so obvious how all our Western secrets were all shared. Your main man is doing it right under your nose. The defining tenet of Richard Nixon and Henry Kissinger's relationship was pursuing detente with the Soviet Union. According to Britannica, when Nixon assumed office in 1969, he was keen to reduce America's military commitment without losing face. Namely, he sought to achieve peace with honour. In Vietnam, detente was... Is it detente? No, never mind. The Soviet Union and opening the relations with China, which had diverged from the Soviet Union during the Sino-Soviet split, according to the National Cold War exhibition. Yeah, China did come about through what all were going on behind the Iron Curtain by the Bolsheviks in shifting the operations over into China. Yeah. It's all clever stuff. And so you see, these people are just puppeteers, It doesn't matter what nation you're in, what religion you're in, these people are moving every single thing that you do, and they're the beneficiaries of everything that you do as well. Your hatred, your division, all this crap and bollocks that I'm seeing a lot more of going on at the moment, and I don't like it. From certain quarters, it's not amusing, I'll tell you. Diplomacy with the Soviet Union was a gravely complicated issue, but Nixon had a strong reputation as an anti-communist and tough negotiator. This gave him the confidence to pursue peace without fear of harsh criticism from conservative members of Congress. Well, yeah, because he's not telling them anything. Kissinger assisted Nixon by negotiating the Strategic Arms Limitation Talks, or SALT, which featured the Treaty on Anti-Ballistic Missile Systems and the Interim Agreement and Protocol on Limitation of Strategic Offensive Weapons. These were signed by Nixon and General Secretary Leonid Brezhnev on the May 26, 1972. He secretly visited China, thawing relations for Nixon. So he took this. Nixon was just a complete puppet of this power, weren't it, really? Henry Kissinger's involvement with China is perhaps his most enduring legacy. According to The Independent, Kissinger's appeal to other world leaders likely stemmed from his success in coordinating a meeting between President Richard Nixon and Chairman Mao Zedong. And that certainly elevated him from simple politician to phenomenon status. And then all our industry shifted, It's just, God, what were our recent ancestors doing? They weren't paying attention, were they? Our grandparents and all, they were just, where were they? And all this is going on. The University of Southern California reported that Kissinger spoke with Premier Zhou Enlai, telling him it is the conviction of President Nixon that a strong and developing People's Republic of China poses no threat to any essential US interest. But yet they had a Cold War against Soviet Union for the very same political system. It's no accident that our two countries have had such a long history of friendship. The meeting was a success, with Kissinger ranked Zhou Enlai as the most impressive statesman he had met since Charles de Gaulle. As shown in White House papers, Kissinger suggested that Nixon could visit in the spring of 1972, but the president's visit occurred even earlier, on February the 21st to the 28th, which Nixon described as the week that changed the world. He backed Pakistan against Bangladesh despite accusations of genocide. According to Gary Brass, author of The Blood Telegram, Nixon, Kissinger, and a Forgotten Genocide, Indians and the Bangladeshis of a certain age remember Henry Kissinger as an unusually cruel and cold-hearted person, via Politico. So that's that group in it. This is because Kissinger and Richard Nixon supported Pakistan's vicious campaign against East Pakistan, which became Bangladesh. In 1971, Pakistan made bitter attempts to prevent this by killing between 200,000 and 3 million Bengalis, according to the New Yorker. A further 10 million refugees fled to India. 3 million. So Pakistanis killed 3 million Bengalis. Okay, now that's a problem. A telegram from the US Department of State titled Selective Genocide gave a vivid account of the atrocity. Here in Dhaka, we are mute and horrified witnesses to a reign of terror by the Pakistan military, adding that the full horror of Pakistan military atrocities will come to light sooner or later. Politico reports that Kissinger reacted by sneering at Americans who bleed for the dying Bengals, adding, "We can't let a friend of ours and China get screwed in a conflict with a friend of Russia's." He won the Nobel Peace Prize for securing Vietnam ceasefire. In 1973, the Nobel Peace Prize was awarded to Kissinger and Leduc Tho for negotiating the Paris Peace Accords, which secured a nationwide ceasefire in Vietnam, the withdrawal of all US troops there, and dismantling of all US bases within 60 days via, and then, well, history, we know that. Furthermore, it stipulated that Vietnam would remain split at the 17th parallel, and that reunification of the country would be achieved through peaceful means. In reaction to the prize, Kissinger said, "I'm deeply moved by the award of the Nobel Peace Prize." Yeah. It's just such a joke, isn't it? That you look at all these Peace Prize winners, and most of them, and they're mass murderers, or they created technology that just murders everybody. It's, inversion. I mean, that's the ultimate inversion, for sure. Am I still on? Or have I run off? No, we're still on. We're good. I can only accept this award with humility. Tho, however, who's the Vietnam guy, refused the prize because he didn't want to be associated with Kissinger, as per Time. However, he may also have rejected it because of rank hypocrisy, as though, which is his name, would oversee the North Vietnamese invasion of South Vietnam in 1975. Many were appalled by Kissinger's award, including 2 members of the Nobel Committee, who resigned in protest. A defining quip came from Tom Lehrer via The Guardian. Political satire became obsolete when Kissinger was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. Yeah, that's about right. The Yom Kippur War broke out in October 1973 when Egypt and Syria attacked Israel on 2 fronts. During the holy day of Yom Kippur, the battle ebbed and flowed and was costly for both sides until the fighting ceased on October the 26th, following ceasefire resolutions from the United Nations. According to Jeremiah Sure, Henry Kissinger stepped in at this point and changed the Middle East dynamic, becoming the leading negotiator between the Israelis, the Egyptians, and the other major actors in the region. Kissinger's intervention became known as shuttle diplomacy, which referred to how he shuttled between the combatants to broker deals and achieve peace and that comes from a Yale Review of International Studies. In negotiations, Kissinger had a flexibility that he was able to placate both Israelis and Arabs, which afforded him greater success than the Russians, who were blighted by Moscow's rigid bureaucratic chain. However, while he successfully negotiated borders and buffer zones between Egypt and Israel, Kissinger neglected other parts of the Middle East, namely Palestine. This would sow resentment in a region that would see great suffering in the 21st century. So there you go, again, calls for Palestine and all its issues and problems. There he is. Nixon was concerned that Henry Kissinger overshadowed him. Yeah, I think that's just how everybody else saw it, really. After the success in China, Vietnam and the Middle East, Richard Nixon was concerned that Henry Kissinger was overshadowing him, according to Vanity Fair. Nixon thought that Kissinger considered himself to have a superior intellect, and that he acted as Nixon's puppet master. He must have took him a while to realise then, but he did, obviously, at one point. Nixon also resented Kissinger's popularity with the press. Nixon would even refer to the K problem in conversations with Bob Haldeman, the White House Chief of Staff, via Vanity Fair, that comes. Nixon was reported to have said Henry's personal problem is just too difficult for us to deal with. Kissinger would use his signatory flattery to manipulate Nixon, but the president sometimes distrusted his admiration. Nixon would sometimes toy with Kissinger to keep him in check. For example, Nixon knew that Kissinger desperately wanted to be the man to make the secret visit to China, so Nixon tortured him by suggesting all of the other worthy candidates for the job, forcing Kissinger to sell himself to him. Sure mind that. Sometimes Nixon would just be plain rude, calling Kissinger my Jew boy to his face. Kissinger, meanwhile, privately referred to his president as the madman, or that madman, my drunken friend, and the meatball mind. Kissinger also despised Nixon's aides, telling the British ambassador, I have never met such a gang of self-seeking bastards in my life. He was the sex symbol of the Nixon administration. I actually remember there's an image of him in it, like naked in one of these stupid mags. I mean, come on. A sex symbol. You mean power symbol. Yeah. Women's Word Daily described Henry Kissinger as the sex symbol of the Nixon administration, okay? Adding that he was always a hit with the ladies. In addition to his glamorous wife, Nancy, Kissinger was being photographed with everyone, from Elizabeth Taylor to Raquel Welch to Dolly Parton and Princess Diana. So prominent was Kissinger's glitz that every Harvard Lampoon published a mock centerfold photo of Kissinger in the nude, parodying a similar image of Burt Reynolds in Cosmopolitan. According to the Harvard Crimson, the image was fake by superimposing Kissinger's face onto the body of a 50-year-old cab driver whose stocky build and nascent paunch bore him some resemblance to Kissinger's. The issue would sell over 1 million copies and reached even the Soviet Premier Leonid Brezhnev, who was so amused by the image that he pinned it on his office wall. Many people have consulted Henry Kissinger since he left office, including presidential candidates. According to ABC, Hillary Clinton said that she relied on his counsel when she was Secretary of State during the Obama administration, from 2009 to 2013. Well, that makes a whole lot of sense. Referring to Kissinger as a friend, Clinton wrote that he checked in with me regularly, sharing astute observations about foreign leaders and sending me written reports on his travels. Clinton's relationship with Kissinger became particularly contentious during her 2016 debates with Bernie Sanders, in which she said, "I was very flattered when Henry Kissinger said I ran the State Department better than anybody had run in a long time." Saunders would say, "I happen to believe that Henry Kissinger is one of the most destructive secretaries of state in the modern history of this country. I am proud to say that Henry Kissinger is not my friend. I will not take advice from Henry Kissinger." Go on. Now, Christopher Hitchens doesn't like Kissinger either, and he's done quite a lot of work about it. Henry Kissinger's legacy is divisive and controversial. Controversial is downright evil. A political article asked 10 historians to summarise Kissinger's career, and the response was broadly critical. However, the most trenchant criticisms came from Christopher Hitchens, the revered public intellectual and author of The Trial of Henry Kissinger. In it, Hitchens argues that Kissinger should be prosecuted for war crimes, for crimes against humanity, and for offences against common or customary or international law, including conspiracy to commit murder, kidnap, and torture. According to George Washington University, judges in Chile, Argentina, and France responded to these damning accusations by summoning Kissinger for questioning. One such summoning occurred when Kissinger was staying in Paris, causing the former Secretary of State to leave the city. In response, Kissinger slandered Hitchens in a radio interview, accusing him of Holocaust denial. Fuck's sake. Hitchens quickly threatened legal action. "Mr. Kissinger will be hearing from my attorney, who will tell him two things he already knows. What he said is false, malicious, and defamatory. And if he says it again, we will proceed against him in court." When Hitchens was suffering from terminal cancer, C-SPAN asked what his reaction would be if Kissinger attempted to reconcile. "It would be extremely interesting, but one of the reasons I detest him is that I sort of know that couldn't happen. He wouldn't even agree to have questions submitted in writing, let alone meet me." So Mussolini were nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize as well. Joseph Stalin, Adolf Hitler. You know, who's running this Nobel Peace Prize? They're absolutely insane. You know what I mean? So that's another point that we can sort of keep an eye on, remember at least anyway. So where are we? So that's the next one, isn't it? In defence of the British Bill of Rights. What is that? A British Bill of Rights? No, I don't think so. I don't have one. What are you lot saying? Can you hear me and everything? Is it okay? We're using up juice. Something's working out last year. So we're on chemtrails. Oh, they've been doing that solid for 4 months. 4 months that I've been noticing over these clouds. So, under lockdown here, it was red hot. Germany got absolutely flooded. Spain at the moment is getting absolutely whitewashed. So, you know, they can't destroy the weather. They can only move it, can't they? Either absorbing it and it goes somewhere else, or pulling it into a particular place and moving it from somewhere else. So it looks like we're getting the rain. Living the dream on pot noodles. Cut the top off a tree. Yeah, man, 5 hours. I mean, the legs are not too bad, to be honest, but I smashed my thumb. It's absolutely killing me. And it's just getting worse. So I smashed it and bent it and twisted it because I nearly, fell off a cliff. So we're holding on for dear life, like Bourne Legacy kind of would do. And then smashed my legs to bits. That hurts, and it still hurts. But I've also wrecked it all up at joint as well, and it's blue under nail. So I don't know what I did exactly, but anyway, I'll be going again next week. Might be able to do another one. Yeah, I'm using Brave. Yeah, it's back on now. It seems to be working, but it wouldn't pull up the. But this next report, it's pulled it up, so we'll be okay. Sound, no video. Still? Oh, okay. What's actually happening here is, I don't know why, but My CPU is off the scale, and this has got a lot of CPU. I might have to upgrade it, and maybe that's what it is, but it's just gone off the scale. It went black. Well, as long as you can still hear me, that's not too bad. I need to keep checking back, don't I think? You're all welcome, Iris Dagger, no problem. So that's Mr. Henry Kitchen. You know, this bunch of Johnny-come-latelys are pushing this pish. It's not fucking doing it again. Hang on, you bollocks. Just do it, you shithead. That one, that's not current route, is it? What's you doing? Oh, there's something gone wrong. Brave. Don't transmit. It's not transitioning. Okay, you'll just have to be stuck with my ugly face. Right, and I'll have to read it to you. Sorry guys about this. I don't know why that's doing that. So this is a piece from The Spectator, 11th of May 2022. Andrew Tettenborn. And it says, in defence of a British Bill of Rights. It says, Amnesty International and Stonewall are no strangers to criticising the government. God, you know, Amnesty International, it's such a corporate shill. It's unbelievable. This week they have all been at it again, blasting Dominic Raab's plans to make adjustments to the Human Rights Act by replacing it with a British Bill of Rights. What about the English Bill of Rights? I mean, what has happened to people? Your Human Rights Act, what do you need that for? You've got the English Bill of Rights, for God's sake, and it's nothing like this corporate pish. Raab's plans to make adjustments to the Human Rights Act by replacing it with a British Bill of Rights. But they are wrong to attack an approach that most Brits will realise is perfectly sensible. Can you see, they're just totally obfuscating the fact that this nation actually has a law, Bill of Rights. It's called law. Yeah? God, man. Raab's plan, which was set out in the Queen's speech yesterday, so that's Jolly Boy. Britain will remain in the European Convention on Human Rights when it comes to international matters, but when interpreting domestic laws, it will change its emphasis slightly. Our courts will be required to downplay decisions of the Strasbourg Court, which has in the last 30 years or so interpreted the Convention in a remarkably freewheeling way, and correspondingly cramped national government style. Strasbourg's decisions will be a mere guide to the meaning of the Convention in Britain, with our judiciary ultimately responsible for interpreting it. This is surely a wise approach and won't lead to the dire consequences that organisations like Stonewall have warned about. There is a prospect of a legislative shift in another area too. The balance between free speech and the press when it comes to privacy rights. In practice, Strasbourg has tended to favour the latter over the former, so privacy rights. I like that. In practice, Strasbourg has tended to favour the latter over the former, and the UK courts have loyally followed. Most recently, in the Sussex case, after the Court of Appeal upheld Meghan Markle's privacy case against the Mail on Sunday, Raab proposes to flip the balance. Well, I mean, if you're in the public eye, I mean, if you're a civil servant, you've lost your right to privacy. That's the whole point of it. You're a civil servant, you know what I'm saying? You can't, you lose your privacy. And if you're going to stick your face out in celebrity land, again, okay, you can expect some, because you're not a servant, as it were, but, you know, people want to know what you're up to kind of thing. But, yeah, if you're working for the state, but whatever department or whatever arena, you have lost your right to privacy because we need to know whether you're doing your job properly. So why are the likes of Stonewall, as well as dozens of others that signed the letter this week, so viscerally opposed to Raab? Apart from a technicality regarding Northern Ireland, which is a special case on account of the Good Friday Agreement, the attack breaks down into three things. First, the weakening the domestic effect of the convention would undermine Strasbourg and question its legitimacy. Secondly, that it would cost the UK its position as a global leader on human rights and risk making it more like Poland or Hungary. both are said to be drifting towards authoritarianism. Oh, I'm like, we're not. They just told you to stay in your ass. I mean, for fuck's sake, how much more authoritarian can you get than that? What? Come on. Jeez, man, they talk out their ass. And finally, that it would remove people's ability to use the courts to confront failures by governments or public bodies to address their concerns. For example, police investigation of violence against women. Oh, they would have to stick that one in, won't they? I mean, these are so well crafted, these little shindigs from the likes of The Spectator. It's just all wind and piss. Semantics. Yeah. To investigate violence against women or Northern Ireland's failure to legalise abortion. So how dare they not legalise the murder of your offspring? You know what I'm saying? It's disgraceful. Looking at it more closely, however, and you might hear an agonised cry of the British progressive elite, scared that its comfortable ascendancy is under serious threat if Rab succeeds in turning over the subject of human rights to the ordinary political process. The European Court of Human Rights is an overwhelmingly liberal and cosmopolitan body. By nature, it sees things in abstract and universalistic terms, and views its function as gently nudging nation states towards its own enlightened worldview. No surprise then if parts of the... What? Nudging nation states towards its own enlightened worldview. What a load of bullshit. It's shoved multiculturalism everywhere. That's what it's done. So, nudging nation states towards its own enlightened worldview. What a load of bollocks. It's actually preventing that, by definition, of its insistence that everybody opens the gates to cultures that don't agree, like, or want the culture that they just moved into. God, utter shit, and they lap it up, don't they? You think about this. You got your hoity toits in City of London going, "Oh Lord, I just never look at this paper. Tell us everything we know." And they're sucking this shit up because they think it's fucking pig shit. They don't even understand their own language. I don't know. So, no surprise any parts of the British establishment who prefer to fight the corner through the courts rather than actually getting down and dirty with voters and politicians view any transfer of powers over human rights back to Westminster with alarm. But to most Brits, Rab's plan comes across as surprisingly grown up and nuanced one, asking all ECHR members to respect a degree of free speech and privacy makes perfect sense. But there is no reason why the boundary between them should not be radically redrawn in Britain, with its tradition of boisterous speech without too much regard for others' sensibilities. Exactly. We all learn if somebody takes piss out of what it is you need to have piss taken out of. Everybody, he mustn't say things. Idiots raise themselves to the top because they are idiots, And, I need to stop ranting because I've forgotten what I am. If this view was right, then Rab's plan immediately falls. No, I've done that. Yeah. If this view is right, then Rab's plan immediately falls neatly into place. The ECR judges that should take more of a back seat. In the camp of thought that civil rights ought, extreme instances aside, to be seen as largely dependent on national institutions and be interpreted consistently with them, it makes sense that the heavy lifting should fall to national courts when it comes to interpreting them. Yeah, but never mind that. Just sod all that bullshit and go back to English Bill of Rights. Go back to English law. Because that still exists. That's the laws of the nation. Everything else is just gobbledygook gained under contract and false pretences and threats. Will the European Court of Human Rights swallow this approach? Well, why did they have to give a shit? That's what we were out of Europe. Can you see when they say that, the way that they talk? Well, will they? Well, they don't have a choice, do they? We've said out. See you later. We don't want it because they've now just mandated things, and then you've got today's where it was set for them not to hand over sovereignty of all their nations to the EU under the next Load of madness. And then they had an emergency one today, didn't they? Because of the bubbles. So if you didn't catch the beginning of the first one, I suppose if ever relating to the moon key bubbles, then just bubbles will suffice. Let me just check that you've not all run off. Okay, we're still on. While it's possible that Strasbourg could undermine the interpretation of the ECR by Britain's courts, repeatedly fined against Britain and caused us embarrassment, the matter may be more nuanced. For one thing, the judges of the Human Rights Court have sensitive political antennae. They might well use a good deal of guile to avoid any such clash. They will find it uncomfortable to be seen telling a democratically elected government that because of its Bill of Rights, its press was way too free for their liking and its victims had too few rights to suppress stories about themselves. I mean, that would work. That kind of garbage had taught well in 80s. That's absolutely insane now to suggest that somebody's concerned about free speech when Faceache, YouTube and all the rest of them have done nothing but censor everything. And so have the press. So what bullshit is that? That's an absolute load of pish. Let's just go back to English Bill of Rights. It's far better. There's also another more veiled but nevertheless important point here. Raab said that the UK intends to remain a party to the Human Rights Convention. Why? Rightly so for the moment, but this should not be an unconditional commitment. If Strasbourg continues to oppose clearly democratic legitimate UK legislation, calls to give our 6-month notice and denounce the ECR entirely will make a hasty return. The judges in Strasbourg need to bear this in mind and the consequences of obstinately continuing to insist that Britain adhere to one-size-fits-all conception of human rights in mind. On this point at least, the ball will stay very firmly lodged in Strasbourg's courts. Well, I don't know why we're even fussing about Strasbourg, apart from how it relates to international law, not United Nations law and all its derivatives. Right, where are we? So, yeah. Are we still having problems? Blank screen again? How many times did you do it? Again? I think it might be down to a computer, you know. I think I might have to upgrade the RAM on this. It's just not cutting the mustard. It's just not doing the job. Black screens matter. Oh, yeah. It's the blue screens you didn't want, isn't it, on PCs? I remember that. Just out that the evil reptile is everywhere, and since it's yeah, he's horrible. He's like a toad, a frog. It's like some kind of big toad kind of character. The Noah laws. Nobody knows about the English Bill of Rights, 1688. No, they don't. Do they? They don't. These youngers haven't got a clue. It's like, I don't know. Anyway, that's where we're at, isn't it? And it looks like they're going for round 2. Bubbles. Bubbles, folks. Bubbles everywhere. Security Times said, yeah, because if you actually... So, you know, they're making it clear what they're offering. You'll have nothing. And be happy. So you're playing along with this trip. That's exactly what they've told you they're going to do to you. Gordon Brown made it very clear before he went to the G7 last year that this, what they've just done, will give them the ability to decide who lives and who dies. That's a video that's out. It's not a secret. He said that as you were going into the G7. I couldn't believe my lugs. I couldn't believe my lugs. However, knowing what I know about Mr. Brown, yes I can. Believe every bit of it, and he would relish it. Yeah. Right. So, what else can I bore you with? See, now then, that's another thing, because I had a follow-on from that Prussia thing. And I haven't been able to retrieve it now for a week. They took it away. I should never have refreshed that page because I had it loaded in my browser. So I'm a bit beefed at myself because it were an amazing, amazing paper on what the Prussians have been doing in this last 100 years. Unbelievable stuff. And it looks like they've took the whole site down, which is sad, but shows how nobody understanding or even realising and recognising this term Prussian as a force. Probably don't want that out. They don't want that being whizzed around everywhere, because Masonry is, at the 21st degree, Prussian Knight. How are they going to explain that one? You know? Not very easy, I would say. Now, I do have something else. What the hell were it? Oh, and now then. So, this is, I mean, obviously, we're covering topics here because these are going to become so pertinent as we move forward into this regime that they're setting up. And it says, so this is the Canary. And Steve Topple on the 20th of May 2022. They're quite good at the Canary. I think they're a bit socialist, but sometimes they can get stuck into stuff, and it's quite interesting. You might want to consider, I mean, I'll put these up under the video after. You might want to consider subscribing to this, because it does come up sometimes with some pretty well investigated reporting. It says the Department for Work and Pensions, the DWP, will have new powers like the police. Okay, I've missed out. The title is the DWP is about to become a corporate fascist regime. Okay. The Department for Work and Pensions, DWP, will have new powers like the police. The government will allow it to arrest claimants and issue fines over alleged fraud. But crucially, the DWP won't even have to take people to court to issue fines. This new agenda from the government can only be described as corporate fascism, and ministers aren't even trying to hide it either. The DWP powers of the police. So this is what they begin. On the Thursday the 19th of May, the government announced its new Fighting Fraud in the Welfare System plan. DWP boss Therese Coffey and Minister Jacob Rees-Mogg are behind it. That Mogg, he's not answered any of my communications. That man thinks he's above man. So I can say now he's not in on it at all. So Theresa Coffey and Rees-Mogg are behind this. The DWP has made no secret of just what the plan involves. It clearly stated on its website that it will give Social Security staff the power to undertake arrests. Fucking job centre! Execute warrants. Well, we did the bailiff thing last week, didn't we? Right? Can you see how, so many are tied to the state, whether you're on pensions or whether you're on benefits, whether you're on disability, mental health, anything you're getting off this state, which they've enhanced with what they've just done in this last 2 years. You're now patients of the other side to it, the NHS. This duty occur is building people. You know what I'm saying? This duty occur that you're handing over to these dipsticks in a contract. Yeah? They can conduct searches. Searches of what, you? Seize evidence. Right, and issue a new type of civil penalty, which is going to be a fine. Did you get that? I'll do that again. So the DWP, this is your job centre staff. I can't believe it. They can undertake arrests, execute warrants, conduct searches, seize evidence, and issue a new type of civil penalty, which will be a fine. Are you getting this? Yeah, your little top up you're getting every week. Employee of the government. Yeah. Disability, pension, all of it. Oh dear. duty of care, people. Get that in your head. And they've told you what they're offering you. You'll have nothing and be happy. And you're giving them by moving in this direction that you've done in the last 2 years, you're giving them the ability to decide who lives and who dies in that system. That's what they're telling you. They're telling you, they're not lying to you. They're telling you, if you're not listening, you're not paying attention, you're with me. You get a grip. Coffey dressed the announcement up with far-right populist language. See, I told you they were a bit left-wing. Her intention is clearly to sell it to the public under the guise of benefit cheats costume. The hard-working taxpayer money, she said. So how are they going to work this out with all these refugees and immigrants? How's that going to work? So who is this aimed at? Is what my feelings are going beep, beep, beep. Are you digging this? The welfare system is there to help the most vulnerable. And that's not you anymore. That's just coming from Ukraine. Yeah, coming in from on to fucking banana boats on English Channel. What? It is not a cash machine for callous criminals. And it's vital that the government ensures money is well spent. When has the government ever done that? Is that a new protocol that they're looking at? The government actually ensures money is spent well. That might get interesting. Fraud is an ever-present threat, and before the pandemic, our efforts brought fraud and error close to record lows. We can keep up with the fraud in today's digital age and prevent, detect and deter those who would try to cheat the system. So if they just send you a letter and say, oh, we've overpaid you, then the next letter will be, you've committed fraud, you paid it all back, you're going to prison, and we're going to take £4 million a day out of your benefits for the rest of your life and your children's. So, more, it says, benefit overpayments due to fraud and error rocketed to a record. So if they accuse you of having been overpaid, if they can slap that on you then as a fraud, that you've done something wrong, filled out a form wrong, or done something wrong, shit, man, you're never going to get a benefit again the rest of your life. Ooh. Government figures show that the total overpayment rate in 2020-21 was 3.9% of the DWP's 211 billion total spend. The DWP is spending 211 billion. Fuck's sake, would that not be better? Pumping it all into private enterprise. What? Where are these economists, these financiers that are supposed to be, fucking fantastic? What part of that don't you get? 211 billion, Department of Work and Pensions. How ridiculous is that? If not totally retarded. 211 billion, we could put this country back on its feet. Remember, this is your money. Although at the moment they're spending borrowed money and you're liable for it as a person with the surname and the debtor. So fraud was up 3%. Fraud was 3%. And this is DUP error accounted for 0.4%. And claimant error was 0.6%. So error then both two. So that accounts for 1%. No, sorry, for 1%. So 2% of it is actually fraud, 1% is error. That's fair enough. At least they're acknowledging error. But crucially, it seems much of the fraud may not be from actual claimants. As ITV reported on May 20th, the DWP presented 1.9 billion of fraud by organised criminals. The DWP's own data shows that this involved 152,000 claims. This has nothing to do with claimants, as it was in the DWP's own words, fraud risks from organised crime groups. where the DWP was detecting and shutting down systematic attacks. Moreover, all the data is not fully evidence-based. For example, the DWP's own methodology organises fraud into various categories. So, any fraud that is a causal link, low suspicion, has been recategorised to a new category of failure to provide evidence or fully engage in the process. Cases with an error in this new category have forgone their full benefit entitlement rather than engage in the benefit review process. Alright, so we therefore are making the assumption that the claim was fraudulent. So there you go, assumption, see? Even though the reason for the non-engagement is not clear. Well, that's not good. See, they can play with that. A bit like the no-hide sub-laws. It's the way they're worded that they can turn that no-hide law system into whatever the hell they want. Anything. And all the king's horses and all the king's men in all nations will follow suit on that. So it says the DWP assumes this category is fraud without any evidence to back it up. Its own figures shows that this accounted for over £500 million. Ooh, that's a lot of money. So much of the 8.3 billion that the DWP promotes as fraud, and that the media dutifully laps up, is just based on assumptions and guesswork. In 2020-21, 152,000. I think what they're doing is hiding the amount of money they're giving to these refugees, to be honest, and the actual figures it's costing us for all these illegals flooding in, because we're paying for them to be housed. You know, it's out of bankrupt nations. This is one way you do it. You know. So that's basically just giving you an insight into what you can expect if you're on any kind of handout from the Looney Tune system. It's not going to go well in the future at all. It really isn't. So I'm going to shut that off, and hopefully my computer might come down a tad because it's going mental. Yeah. Oh, I was going to do. I'd started to put together some definitions of law, but because I didn't get back till later today, I didn't have time. So what I'll do is next week we'll do another one where we're looking at different aspects of law, defining older versions of law, just to expand and you'll understand why the words are so important, and that you either don't ever use them or that you do use them. Or if you've seen them being used, you understand the context that they're trying to trap you with, you know? Yeah. All kids on certificates by 2030. I think I've heard something about that, yeah. What's this Prussian paper? It might be, let me have a look, because the website, let me just have a look. So, it's Substack. It's a Substack. Substack.com, Prussiagate. So the title is https://Prussiagate.substack.com. And it's been removed, or at least now what I've noticed as well, what they seem to be doing with me is they're in my computer somewhere, and they're blocking me from doing things. So they've really upgraded their interference. So that's 77 Brigade and Unit 8500. That's in Israel. 77 Brigade is so-called English people, fucking fuckwits if you ask me, spying on their own fucking people. What the fuck? Excuse me, I'm swearing. I do apologise. Yeah, it's all going to go digital. In that game that you're all moving. You know, anyway, you know what I'm saying. well, yeah, you really have to watch for this, because what's important is all them powers they give themselves, but it's all an assumption. All this, we've made a mistake, you've been overpaid. If you don't get to nuts and bolts of it with them, it's an assumption. And now they can class it as fraud. Criminal. It's criminal. So, you've got to be careful here with these dicks. Keep your paperwork in absolute order, so you know every single detail of what it is they've said they're going to pay you. Because if assumption, that's what that report's telling you, that it's all on assumption. And I don't think there's that much fraud going on. I mean, we know that our one group of society do milk it to death. They're not shy about it. But I think a lot of what they're doing is just adding the true cost to the DWP's budget to deal with all these immigrants that have piled in while you were all in kennel, being a good doggy. Yeah. Well, I think I've run out of stuff to say. Me. And I am absolutely knackered. Can I have a bit of time off and have an early one? Yeah. I'm glad you're all having a good chit chat. So, folks, with that, I'm going to say, till the next time.